Hi, my name is Rachel and you're watching the You Autistic channel. Welcome to part 2 of my guide for self-diagnosis. If you watched the last video, then you know that we cover the first half of the diagnostic criteria for autism in DSM-5. If you haven't watched that video, then I will link it up on this side so you can watch it before watching this one. I'll also put it in the end screen if you want to stay and watch this video before you watch the first one. I won't waste any more time with small talk. Let's just get into part 2. So the second half of the diagnostic criteria for autism deals with restricted or repetitive patterns of behavior, interests, or activities. And so the DSM splits this up into 4 different parts, which you only need evidence in 2 to be diagnosed. So if you can't think of examples in your life in all 4 of these categories, that's okay. You only need examples in 2 to be diagnosed. The first category is stereotyped or repetitive motor movements, use of objects, or speech. So stereotyped or repetitive motor movements is basically just talking about like motor stimming. So if you don't know what stimming is, it is self-stimulatory behavior that is used to deal with like negative emotions or overwhelm or even to just express emotions. Some examples of stimming are the classic examples like hand flapping, head nodding, rocking back and forth, rocking your head back and forth, things like finger tapping, finger snapping, bouncing your leg, twirling, jumping, or like playing with your hair, or just like playing with objects type of thing. So yeah, if you find yourself doing these things or any other type of like body movement to help yourself deal with like stress or anxiety, or like you're feeling really overwhelmed about something, so you start doing like a certain body movement of some sort, then that is stimming. Some examples of stimming that I do is I do a lot of things with my hands, so this is one of the things that I do a lot, or I'll do things like this. Or if my nails are longer, then I'll like, I don't know if you can see this, but I'll like go like this. I don't know if you actually see what I'm doing, but I'll go like this, but my nails are short right now, so I don't do that. But yeah, those are just some examples that I do. Stereotyped and repetitive use of objects. So it's just like using objects in a really like repetitive sort of way. I feel like I just kind of resaid what it is. But some examples is just like lining up objects or lining up toys. Like if as a kid you're that kid that would like line up all of your toys in a row and that was how you play with your toys, then yeah, you may be autistic. Or it could also be something like flipping objects, apparently. I mean, this is what it says in DSM-5 criteria. I don't really know what flipping objects really means, but if you do that, then comment down below because I don't really know what that means. Please let me know. Help me out in the comments, please. But yeah, one example I could think of, maybe you're not really the type of kid to like, you're not the type of person to line up things, but something that I used to do, like I called it organizing. So I would organize like the plastic cups in a cupboard that we had when I was a kid, and like I would do this for fun. Like I would just go to the kitchen and start organizing the cups. I would put them in like from like tallest to shortest, and I would organize it all, and nobody would know. No one in my family knew that I was doing this. So when they put cups back in the cupboard, they would just put them in randomly, and then I would get annoyed because I'm like, I just organized this. Why are you messing it up? But they had no idea. So yeah, I think that also goes into this category of like repetitive use of objects, like setting things up in a certain way and doing that like repeatedly, I guess. And then stereotyped or repetitive speech. So this includes things like echolalia. So echolalia is repeating sounds, words, or phrases. So either repeating it out loud or in your head. Some examples of this could be like if you hear like a certain word that you like stop or something, and so you find yourself saying it over and over and over again, or it's repeating it a lot in your head. Echolalia can also be a form of stimming. So something that I used to do a lot when I was in middle school and like high school, when I was nervous for something that was coming up, maybe I had a presentation, I would repeat in my head like this random phrase that I made up, which went, we got this, we good, we rock all day, we rock all night, we got this, we good, we rock all day, we rock all night. And I would repeat that over and over and over and over again in my head to like calm myself down. So that is echolalia. If you're the type of person to do something like that, then yeah, you're probably doing echolalia. Another type of form of echolalia, kind of, depending on how you do it, is scripting or movie talk. Apparently, it's also called that. And that's just using phrases or lines from like TV, movies, or songs in your speech, or just like you saying it repeatedly. So, an example of using scripting in speech might be maybe somebody asks you like, "Oh, what do you want to do?" or like, "Where do you want to go?" and and your response would be like the line from the line from Beauty and the Beast when Belle is like, "I want adventure in the great wide somewhere." That could be an example of scripting. It's a very terrible example, but yes, that could be scripting. Or maybe you just use like a line from a movie or a song or a book that you've heard to kind of help you with communicating with others. An example of using it like scripting like repetitively, so it's kind of more like echolalia. I have an example from my childhood when I was like little. I would repeat the line from the Rubber Ducky song, from like Sesame Street, like "Rubber Ducky, you're so fun," and I would repeat that over and over and over again and drive my sister crazy. Naomi, if you're watching this, I'm sorry that I did that to you. So another example of repetitive speech or I think this is more stereotype speech and not really repetitive speech. So it's called idiosyncratic language, and so it's like a broad term that kind of refers to several different speech characteristics that are actually like errors in pragmatics. So it's like using like standard words or phrases, but in like an unusual type of way. So one example is like, let's say an autistic kid wants to go to the park, and at the park they see dogs all the time. So instead of saying, "I want to go to the park," they'll say dogs, or they'll say, "Let's see dogs," or "Oh, look, dogs," something like that. It's maybe something they've heard their parents say at the park or something, or they'll just say dogs because they want to go to the park, and at the park there's dogs. So that's an example of idiosyncratic language. Another example is called pedantic speech, and that is speaking in an overly formal way in non-formal settings. So if this is you, then maybe instead of saying like, "Hey, what's up?" you would say, "Hello, how are you doing this fine afternoon?" So you'd see that one example is a lot more formal. Like if you're just talking to your friends and you said, "Hello, how are you doing this fine afternoon?" they'd be like, they might be confused. If they don't know you, if they don't know anything about autism, then they probably might say that you speak weird or something like that. So these are the examples I thought of for stereotyped and repetitive movements, use of objects, or speech. So the second category is insistence on sameness, inflexible adherence to routines, or ritualized patterns of verbal or nonverbal behaviors. So this is basically needing things to be the same and having like really strict like routines or like rituals that you stick to. Some examples that you might experience in your life if you're autistic. So maybe you experience a lot of distress or you experience a lot of anxiety when things suddenly change. It could be a small change, it could be a big change, but whenever there is a change that you're not expecting, you find yourself getting anxious or overwhelmed or distressed. So another example might be maybe it takes you a lot of time to like process and deal with like change and transitions. So an example, maybe like you didn't have any plans and then maybe your friends say, hey, do you want to hang out today? And you want to hang out with them, but you need some time to like process and like to like process and like handle that transition from like, oh, I'm not doing anything to now I am doing something. Maybe it takes you a little bit of time, maybe you feel a little bit anxious and you have to like process it and like take some time to like figure it out and then you're good to go. Another example for this category is maybe you think in very like black and white terms. So either there's not really much of an in between for you. Like it's either this or this, and there's not really much of an in between. Another example I can think of for like maybe like a ritualized pattern of behavior could be like maybe you have a very specific way that you greet people, or like a very specific thing that you do when you meet a new person. So maybe when you meet a new person, you always have to shake their hand, or maybe whenever you meet someone, you always say, it was very nice meeting you. I don't know. It could be something as simple as that, or something very complicated, like when you meet someone, you have to go up, shake their hand, say hello, say how are you, and talk about the weather. But if you do the same thing every single time, like you have to do the same thing, like you follow a routine or like a pattern, like every time you talk to someone, then yes, this probably relates to you. Another example of like, routines and stuff is like maybe you always take the same route to work or to school and you never really deviate from that. Doesn't matter if there's traffic, you are still going to go the exact same way. Maybe you have some like other specific routines. So like maybe you eat the same foods for like breakfast or lunch or dinner every day. Like I used to in like I think in middle school and like the first 2 years of high school. I'm pretty sure, or even before that, even in elementary school, even I would eat like toast for breakfast every single day. And the only day, and yeah, I would have like toast with butter every single day for breakfast. And then on Fridays, I would have toast with butter and jam because it was Friday. And I did that every single day. And I was okay with it. Like I would eat the same food every single day and I wouldn't have anything else. And I wouldn't deviate from that. It was just like my routine every day. So yeah, another like specific routine you might have is like maybe you wear like certain colors on certain days or something like that. Like maybe you really love Mean Girls, so you always wear pink on Wednesdays. Also, I just realized today is Wednesday when I'm filming this video and I am wearing pink. I didn't plan it though, so that's cool. So then my last example here is that you really just you like feel that you really need things to be like the same and things to be predictable instead of like you don't like spontaneity. Like you're not a spontaneous person at all. So those are all of my examples for this section on sameness and routines and patterns. So the third category is highly restricted and fixated interests that are normal in intensity or focus. So this is just talking about special interests. And if you don't know what special interest is, it's an interest that typically autistic people have, that it can be one, it can be multiple, but basically it's an interest that you're just highly focused on, like you're fixated on, like where the neurotypical person in interest, if they had an interest in hockey, maybe they play hockey on the weekends and they watch hockey games. Maybe they collect hockey cards if that's a thing. But like, that's basically it. If you have a special interest, if your special interest is hockey, then you might watch all the hockey games that come out. You might watch old hockey games for like hours on end. You might read all the books on hockey. You might collect, like, you have like a super huge collection of hockey cards, if that's a thing. Maybe you like collecting hockey pucks. Maybe you love skating and like practicing hockey things or playing like ball hockey or something. But basically, it's like your level of interest, like your intensity of interest is like a lot higher than like the neurotypical person would be. So, yeah, so if you find that when you're interested in something, you spend a lot of time like researching, learning about it, you want to watch all of the videos about it, you want to read all the books about it, you like collecting things about it. Collecting is another big part of special interest. So if you find that you love like collecting things about this one thing that you love, then yeah, you probably have special interest. Yeah, an example I can give of myself, one of my special interests that I had when I was in high school was figure skating. So I watched so many videos on YouTube of like random people figure skating. I made sure to DVR all of the figure skating events that was happening during the Olympics. I took figure skating lessons. I had a Pinterest board full of figure skating stuff. I even would look at like websites to find ice dancing partners, even though I didn't know how to ice skate at the time. So, yeah, I was just like really super focused on figure skating. And your interest can be as specific as like wheels on a car to as broad as like animals in general. And also, I don't know if I already said this, but it doesn't always have to be just like one, and it doesn't have to be one from like childhood all the way up until now. You can have different special interests. It can change, they can repeat, but the general thing is that if when you are interested in something, it's like super like fixated and highly like focused on that one thing, then that is a sign of having special interest. So the fourth and final category for the second half is hyper or hypo reactivity to sensory input, or unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. So hyper reactivity to sensory input, or you can just say hypersensitivity, is where you have a low tolerance, I suppose, for that sensory thing. So some examples might be like maybe you're sensitive to loud noises or loud sounds. So when things are really loud for you, it may make you really overwhelmed or make you anxious, or it may feel painful for you. But for other people who don't have a like hypersensitivity to sound, they would be like, this isn't even that loud, you know? Another example could be like you're maybe like hypersensitive to bright lights, so you like to wear like sunglasses a lot, or like you like to turn down the brightness maybe on like your phone or something like that. You can also be hypersensitive to textures, certain textures or touches or tastes. So like I know that for me, I don't like wearing jeans. I've given up on wearing jeans at this point in my life. It's just at this point in my life, it's actually like it's really unbearable for me to wear jeans because it's just the most uncomfortable thing. I just wear a lot of sweatpants and leggings nowadays. But yeah, that could be like a texture. So like jeans is an example of like a texture you might be hypersensitive to, or even like wool or anything, I guess, really. Certain touches. So like maybe you don't like soft like little strokes or something like that. Maybe you need things to be like firm. So like if someone's giving you a hug, you like a firm hug, not like a light little hug, you know? Or maybe just like to touch in general. So maybe you don't like being touched a lot. When you get touched a lot, it's like really overwhelming and just like really like irritating. And then you could be hypersensitive to taste, to certain tastes, or like food textures. So like maybe you only like crunchy things but you don't like soft things, or you like soft things but you don't like mushy things, or you like mushy things but you don't like crunchy things. Yeah, it can be any type of food texture that you just really cannot stand, and it's not, or certain tastes, and like you just cannot eat that food unless you feel like you're gonna like gag or throw up, or like you just feel like really terrible about it. I don't really know how to explain that, but an example for me would be like soggy or mushy foods. Things like oatmeal, I cannot eat oatmeal. If I try to eat oatmeal, I will gag. So if that's like for you, like if you have a certain texture of food that you can't eat because it physically makes you feel sick, then you might have hypersensitivity to that. And then finally, another hypersensitivity is like scents. So maybe you can't stand like strong scents. It's like overwhelming. Maybe it gives you a headache. So on the flip side of that would be hyporeactivity to sensory input, or hyposensitivity. So, and that is like it's really pretty much the opposite of hypersensitivity. So instead of being having a low tolerance or something, you have a really high tolerance. So like if you have a hyposensitivity to sound, for example, then maybe you would listen to things like really loud. Like people would say like, oh wow, you're listening to that like really loud, or maybe you talk really loudly. Like people have said that before to you, but to you it just feels normal. So it can be like that for texture and touch. Maybe you have hyposensitivity to touch, so you feel like you need to constantly be touching things to get enough, to get to like your baseline of like sensory input of touch. If you have like a hyposensitivity to taste, then you're probably the type of person that puts a lot of hot sauce on their food, or you add a lot of salt or sugar or just spices to your food all the time because you feel like you're not tasting things enough, like you always have salt and pepper because you can't taste nothing. If you have a hyposensitivity to like scents, then you may be the type of person who loves to have like a scented candle going. You love like having like strong smelling lotions or perfumes because you don't get enough smells from like a regular environment. So hyposensitivity also includes things like having a high pain tolerance and not really feeling like changes in temperature. So you might be the type of person that wears shorts in the winter and you're like, it's not cold, but everybody else is freezing. So the third thing in this is unusual interest in sensory aspects of the environment. So this is going to be like touching things a lot. Like you like to touch certain things. So like for me, I know that whenever I go to like Walmart or like Home Sense, anywhere that sells blankets or pillows or sweaters, if I see something that looks like soft or fuzzy, I am gonna touch it because I want to see if it feels as soft, touchy as top, if it feels as soft and fuzzy as it looks. So I'm not sure if that actually counts as an unusual interest in an aspect of environment, but I think it does because most people don't feel the need to touch every fuzzy thing that they see. So yeah, and that's the type of person, if you like touching like really fuzzy things, or maybe you like touching really like spiky things or like rough things a lot, then yeah, you should write that down in your notes. Don't think I forgot about those notes. Write it down, son. Okay. Another thing you might like is smelling things. So like maybe you love going to like Bath and Body Works because you love smelling all of the candles, all of the lotions, all of everything. You just love to smell things all the time. Or maybe you like looking at like lights and like colors and like those like little videos where it's like moving like color lights type of things. Maybe you can just like stare at that for like hours on end because you just love it. Or it could also be like with movement, because movement is a sensory aspect of the environment. So maybe you really love like swinging on swings because you love that back and forth movement, or you love like jumping on the trampoline a lot because you love to like bounce and stuff like that. So yeah, those are some examples that I have of basically like sensory stuff. So that is a diagnostic criteria. That is the second half of the diagnostic criteria of DSM-5. So if you watched my last video and this video, then you've seen it all. So now you may be wondering, well, where do I go from here? Well, if you have been taking notes, like I suggested in the first video, then yeah, then you'll probably see if you have a lot of examples, if you see that you have a lot of kind of examples that like fit like all the diagnostic criteria, or maybe you still have a lot, but it's not quite enough, then I would suggest to seek out an official diagnosis. I'm also a self-diagnosed autistic person, so yeah, I know just as much as anybody, like finding like being able to get an official diagnosis is really difficult, but I still suggest you try, like if you really want to, then speak to your doctor, and I'm sure they can direct you from there, and try to find, maybe if you have a job or if you're at school, if they can kind of cover that cost for you so that you can get accommodations that you need. Yeah, and if you can't get a diagnosis at this time, if you don't really want to get a formal diagnosis, then I suggest continuing to learn and research about autism, especially from, well, not especially, just from actually autistic people, because you want to be able to hear different perspectives of the autistic experience from lots of different autistic people, because autism is a spectrum, so it looks different for everybody. So if you see one person's video and you relate to a lot of what they're saying, but then you watch someone else's video and you don't relate to anything they're saying, and you watch another person's video and you don't relate to anything they're saying, then there may be something else going on there. I don't know. You wanna like learn from more than just one person, basically. Also, if you are not seeking out a formal diagnosis, it's also really helpful to learn from other autistic people, because they can help you maybe find different like ways that you can like get accommodations for yourself or support yourself with things that you struggle with. And that really goes for everyone, like regardless of if you're seeking out a formal diagnosis or not. You should always continue to learn and listen to other actually autistic people out there. Like there are a lot of like YouTube channels, Facebook pages, Instagram accounts, TikTok pages, Twitter pages. Is it a Twitter page? I think so. Of yeah, actually of hashtag actually autistic people out there who are talking about autism, talking about, you know, ways to cope with different things and tips and tricks and all the sorts of stuff. So you should follow as many people as you can, learn from as many people as you can, and enjoy learning more about yourself, because I know I do. So that brings us to the end of this video. If you liked it and you found it helpful, then please hit the like button so that I know that I did a good job. If you have any questions or you have anything else that you'd like to add about any of the diagnostic criteria that we talked about, then go ahead and comment that down below, because I love seeing what you guys have to say. And finally, if you enjoy my videos, then please subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you know when I post my next video. So remember to stay racialistic, or whatever your name is, istic. Bye!